time is numb, the Keurig's clean. Your dog is dead, it's a Ponzi Scream. Ponzi Scream, Ponzi Scream, because it's just something to do.
Who do you think Stormy Daniels voted for?
Oh,
who is she going to vote for?
I think Stormy Daniels is a Yang person. I think that's the thing about Andrew Yang is he kind of sweeps up all those,
that makes I can see that.
Andrew Yang is like those weird supplements that you find at the Whole Foods where they're like, this cures the flu. He sweeps up all those random those free radicals.
He gets the celebrity vote.
He's like colloidal silver. Or vitamin B12 like supplements.
Or not B12. That's not weird enough. He's like B15 or like B23 or something like that. Like, yeah, I think Stormy Daniels would be way into Yang for sure. Although I'm not going to put it past her. She might just be like super into Bernie too as well.
Yeah, I could see her being Williamson though if Marianne made it further though. Like,
there's a chance.
I could see it. I think that she's somewhere in that spectrum. Then there's also Tulsi, which is the other element of kind of the like anti-establishment
liberal
figures. I mean,
the
like,
liberal fash, filament.
I think Stormy Daniels is just a really big BJP supporter. Yeah, she really likes the annexation of Kashmir. That's Stormy Daniels' big fucking policy plank.
I'm actually going to look it up and see if Stormy Daniels does have an endorsement.
What do you think, Gabe? Before Danny
my big thing with her is that as a celebrity who's kind of made it, and it reminds me of like what how Dave Chappelle and how our boy Chris Glover, Donald Glover, how they're kind of into Yang. I think she could be into Yang like that too,
for the same reason.
Yeah, just sort of like, okay, they're all entrepreneurs, they're all in entertainment.
Yeah,
they kind of want to give everybody a shot to do that too, but like, I don't think that she's read Marx.
Okay,
I don't think that she's got a background in unions or union work or
true. And there is something that's very like about the UBI that kind of fits into that ideology of like helping everyone, but also giving everyone like some agency to decide what they do with $1,000. Like there's no like this is going to like relieve structural inequality. This is just going to like give people the agency to like have some money to throw around, and that's like a very like. I didn't come from very much, but I want people to do better now.
Because Stormy Daniels has won the lottery in a form of sex work and in entertainment.
Oh yeah,
she's made her money doing her own thing.
Totally.
And so with that, there's that. I feel almost like a libertarian streak that would be cool with the UBI.
Yeah,
and like, okay, now you got the 1,000, you can play with it any way you want.
True. And Marianne Williamson actually kind of really only appeals to like kind of more bourgeois Hollywood people. Yeah, like Hollywood wine moms. Like that. Marianne is a little bit more. I think it's an upper echelon.
Yeah,
of class.
Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. It's a different kind of person. It's a different grift, and whereas like Tulsi is like a lot of very like I don't know, like red-pilled vets who also have read Marx. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of like Tulsi's got a lot of weird elements going on, and I think Tulsi people are actually very political people. Like they like care and are invested in politics. They just have heterodox conclusions, whereas like Williamson and Yang people are not invested in politics fundamentally. They are invested in lifestyle things. They're invested in things that all of us should be more invested in, which is like living a wholesome life.
Yeah,
like a fulfilling life.
Dude, Yang I like watching him. I like, he's he's personable. Oh, so it's like, okay, he's like a cool dude.
You watched the TikTok of him at the pizza place?
Yeah.
You've watched that?
I haven't said no. I don't know what you're talking about.
Is it the one where
I don't watch TikTok.
No,
I'm like, I don't.
It's just him. It's just a 10 to 12 second clip of him.
I've gone through puberty. What is this TikTok?
He's just at like a Cece's Pizza, and he's doing a little song to himself, and it's literally like
that pizza. I like that pizza pie. I like that pizza one. Pizza guy. I want that pizza. I want that pizza pie.
pizza, pizza, pizza. I like pizza, pizza. And he's like going to get some more from under the sneeze guard. And
the fucking Life is Good candidate. Jesus Christ.
No,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Dude, Yang definitely like has smoked weed and watched like Harold and Kumar movies like with his friends.
Absolutely.
Like Yang watches.
Not just because he's Asian.
He can quote Super Troopers. Like Yang is a guy who.
Yes.
Like Yang was in my dorm. Not him specifically, but that energy, that person.
100%.
Dude, you know what? Not
100%.
only has he watched those movies, he's watched them sober. I bet that he's not fucking just dirtying them with
he's getting his like 8-year-old children to watch Super Troopers with him and be like, oh, you don't get that joke, that's too bad, but this one's funny for daddy. This is a daddy joke. You know, he's the kind of guy who's going to say that sort of stuff.
I have an update, by the way. Stormy Daniels, it doesn't appear, has endorsed anybody. It does look at one point like she did endorse a sort of odd local politician called Michael Hing, who had a Senate bid back in 2019. But more importantly, quote from the Daily Beast, Washington Times, Michael Avenaughty endorses Joe Biden. He has my enthusiastic support.
What a grifter. Avenatti's a grifter and Biden's a grifter, and they're...
Dude, Avenaughty...
What strange bedfellows, though.
Dude,
but they're...
I think Avenaughty would be a Bloomberg fan, though, too, you know? They're in the same New York ecosystem.
But they're both kind of doing the same thing of like being like, I am going to like use my machismo to stand up for the resistance. And like, instead of like having like they're basically...
You mean Avenaughty and Biden?
Yeah, Avenaughty and Biden. Yeah, they're really trying to like use their masculine energy as a like, I will stand up for the women. Yeah, and I will fight for the women. And like that, I will use that. And I will take him out back and I will kick his ass behind the gym. Dude, kind of a thing. You know, it's the same.
He looks like a Slytherin dude. He has Snake vibes for sure. Like he looks like an upskirt guy. Like he's got cameras on the top of his shoes. like he has that.
He's a little too hot for that though.
I wouldn't call him hot. I would say he's weird. He's kind of odd and bald. Like not that that's bad, but look at the guy. He's like really he has a weird face.
I could see some.
Yeah, I like the idea of GoPro cameras on the top of your wingtips.
Look at him, dude. David, look at this guy. He looks like
no, he's too handsome. He's too handsome for
he has a strong jaw. I'll give you that. I would say he's quite symmetrical in the face, but like that's
what else you need in a man, you know. I mean,
I don't like his eyes, man. They're too beady and squinty. You know what I mean?
He looks like the star of a direct-to-video knockoff of Crank.
It's
like you're a lawyer, and you've got to make sure that your heart rate never goes underneath 120 beats a minute.
Yeah, I feel like he also has a porn face, actually, which is fitting because he did represent Stormy Daniels. Like he does look like one of those weird male porn stars.
If he had a face tattoo, he would be a porn star forever.
Yeah, for sure.
But more importantly, Michael Avenaughty last month pleaded not guilty to an indictment accusing him of trying to extort as much as $25 million from Nike by threatening by threatening to go public with claims that the company made improper payments to athletes.
So he's extorting them. Blackmail. Classic blackmail.
He also I read a story where in this case he right before it, like right after it happened, he Googled on his computer what is insider trading.
Oh, you guys!
So he and I have something in common.
Yeah.
But my justification is I was prepping for a podcast.
Yeah.
I was just doing research.
You got it.
A funny defense that he had. Yeah.
People have to be aware that you just can't be Googling those kinds of things in 2020.
Avenaughty was preparing to come on Ponzi Scream. That's why. That's like I will submit an amicus brief to defend him.
I mean, I'm Googling that too for Gabe's reason, but I'm also Googling like what's the best type of industrial sewing machine for bag making, you know? Like,
sure, because we know you're setting up a sweatshop in your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just Googling clips of Fight Club.
Different clips.
Just looking at movieclips.com all day.
We all have a very idiosyncratic YouTube sort of fetishes.
It's like John Oliver and Fight Club clips.
Dude, my YouTube fucking weird at this this point. It really is. It's like Joe Rogan pops in there every once in a while because that's just what happens if you're a comedian on YouTube. But yeah, a lot of sewing.
So prosecutors accused Avenaughty of demanding money from Nike in exchange for agreeing to scrap a threatened news conference to discuss the athletic wear company's alleged improper payments to elite college basketball recruits. This happened. A trial just happened, and he lost a motion to dismiss. He lost his fight to dismiss 2 counts in this criminal case of extortion. This is in New York. The judge didn't rule on Avenaughty's motion to dismiss a 3rd count in the indictment. Yeah, so he has that, and then he also has another case.
What?
Yeah, he's got another one.
I mean, once you've started, why not just keep stacking indictments?
Can I make just a quick comment on the Nike thing? This guy has like real dumb guy energy. Like,
yeah,
of all of the companies that you're going to try to extort, it just happens to be the one that like single-handedly powers the University of Oregon's football team, the one that's probably on
most powerful football team.
Yeah.
They have great jerseys.
College football team. They have great jerseys,
amazing jerseys.
You know,
what do they do with the old jerseys? Because don't they have a new one every game?
Do they?
Yeah, I've heard that the Oregon Ducks have a new jersey every game and it's like a new style every game.
Oh, dude, what if they do what like Marc Jacobs or not Marc Jacobs?
Tom's shoes.
No, it's like one of those like high end like douchebag like American Eagle. It's like one of those things where they like burn stuff they don't sell so poor people can't wear them.
Nice.
Yeah, there is.
That's what I like behind a high end restaurant. Just have an electrified trash can.
Yes,
with barbed wire around
it's exactly like that.
Oh,
yeah.
God, I'm so upset.
No, but yeah, why is he fucking going after them? And then also, couldn't he have just had a press conference? Because is there nothing illegal about like doing that?
He was trying to leverage this press conference, and get money out of not doing it. He also has pled not guilty in Manhattan, New York, to stealing about $300,000 from Stormy Daniels after helping her secure a book contract. Oh my God, this man! He's grifting the grift.
And for a little while,
he's like Omar.
He was the white knight, you know. And,
yeah.
And we had all these libs that thought that he was gonna be the guy that took down Donald Trump. And I think that's so funny that when like we get these like Democrats that think that they'll side with the CIA heads or they'll side with the FBI heads, and it's like, no, these guys are monsters as well. Like Avenaughty was not a good dude.
Yeah, they're sellswords.
They're
fucking
like
mercenaries.
Bronn from Game of Thrones. Exactly.
Yeah, you can't trust him as far as you can throw him.
He doesn't even have like a Mandalorian ethos. You know what I mean? Like there's
no honor there.
There's no honor. Avenaughty is not a Mandalorian.
And he looks like a fucking snake. I'm not.
Do you guys think he has a big dick? I don't think. I think he's medium small.
Dude,
I think
it would be really funny if he had like a huge hog.
Most lawyers, I'd imagine, have medium small.
No, they're dudes that love doing homework.
Yeah, I don't think if you had a big dick, you wouldn't go to law school. Like you're just not gonna. Why would you go to law school if you have a big dick?
I bet I'm willing to put it at a solid 40% that he took the case just under the potential that he could have sex with Stormy Daniels. You gotta figure. He was probably
true.
This is gonna be a high profile case, and who knows? Maybe I'll get it wet. It's like I bet that is in his wheelhouse for sure.
So then he also pled not guilty in California court to wire fraud, bank fraud, and other crimes, including stealing from clients. Okay, he has 3 charges. He has 3 ongoing criminal investigations going on, or ongoing criminal lawsuits against him. Back to the Nike one. Prosecutors say Avenaughty failed to reveal that Nike had offered to settle with his clients, youth basketball coach Gary Franklin, so long as the Beaverton, Oregon-based company...
Beaverton, Oregon! That's right!
That's right. Beaverton, Oregon-based company did not have to pay Avenaughty himself.
Oh, so they're kind of doing the Pete thing where they're like, no. I was not hired by a bread price-fixing company. I worked for a third-party subsidiary that fixed bread prices. They're just trying to like, we don't want to dignify this guy. He's fucking blowing my mind already. He's so dumb. He's got such dumb guy energy.
He's really trying to. I mean, I think he's kind of trying to, like, you know what you got to do to beat Donald Trump? You got to fight fire with fire. You got to fight like supreme grift with supreme grift. But he didn't. Not like you need to fight populism with faux populism with populism. He's like, you need to fight grift with more grift and like less powerful and less successful grift. I think that's like the big takeaway from Michael Avenaughty for me. And I wish him all the best.
Is he like in a correctional facility or like a holding thing right now?
Yeah, so he spent time in jail, man.
Yeah,
he was in Manhattan Correction Center.
Oh no, he was in
the Epstein Chapo jail.
Yeah, the bad one.
He was in the one in Lower Manhattan, right next to the police precinct, and he spent like 14 days in jail. Or something like that in solitary.
Wow. Whoa.
Or not solitary, but like 14 days in a cell by himself. I'm sorry.
In protective custody.
They put fucking Michael Avenaughty in a protective custody, and they put fucking Epstein with a cop who killed people. Jesus Christ.
Yep. Yeah, he spent 14 days in the cell since being arrested. This was this story is from late January. There's a good, here's a quote. He's quoted as threatening to say in a recorded telephone conversation, with Avenaughty's, with the lawyers, basically. So Avenaughty talked to Nike's lawyers, basically. And this is, a quote. I'll take 10 million off your client's market cap. Avenaughty is quoted as threatening in a recorded telephone conversation. I'm not expletive fucking around with this thing anymore.
I'm not shitting around.
I'm not assholing around. Yeah. In exchange for not going public, Nike would have to pay the coach $1.5 million for any claims related to no longer sponsoring his team. Immediately pay $12 million and guarantee $15 to $25 million in total payments for the internal investigation. When one of Nike's lawyers said that he had never received payments like that, Avenaughty asked if he had ever, quote, held the balls of the client in your hand where you could take $5 to $6 million cap off of them, according to court documents. They are going to incur cut after cut after cut. That's what's going to happen as soon as this thing becomes public. So he said all this stuff.
Just incredible. I mean, it's one thing if you can like follow through with any of like the threats that you have, or at least be able to present them like that, like, you know, but it's just, dude, you're a loser. I mean, like, well, look, maybe I have to look into the past of him a little bit and like how successful he has been with like other cases, but like he's just batting out of his league, you know? He
really does seem to be batting out of his league, and not to like give like a mafioso like too much credit, but like a mafia boss, if you're going to extort someone, first off, don't extort a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Second off,
yeah, you find an individual.
You find an individual that works there that has a grift, that has, you know, some sort of like issue with the company, that they got turned down for a promotion to senior vice president or whatever. You do that, and also, come on, tap them down to make sure they're not wearing a wire. I mean, this is just.
Sure.
Has he not seen every mob movie? You know,
all of my threats for extortion happen in bathhouses.
After
watching The Wire, not The Wire, but The Sopranos. You know,
like, it wasn't even that. He was on the phone. He was like, "What do you guys do? Go down to the beach. Make sure there's lots of ambient waves crashing."
No. I think he did meet in person, but they recorded it.
Oh,
they just recorded it.
Okay.
Wait. Or was he on the phone?
Dude,
in a recorded telephone conversation.
Yeah,
You're right.
he was on the fucking
Oh my
phone.
god.
Yeah.
So you're right. So
no, it's just like, it's so stupid. It's just, go to B&H and take that meeting where there's like fucking all kinds of Rube Goldberg devices going on right above you, and all kinds of conveyor belts moving cameras for people.
Yeah. So anyways, vote Joe Biden because Michael Avenaughty has endorsed him.
Yeah.
And I think is that all we have to say about Michael Avenaughty before we move on to the entree?
I'm sure this won't be the last time we're talking about him. I'm sure he'll come up again.
Yeah, there's going to be more things that happen because he's got 3 active criminal trials going on against him. So more TBD.
Yeah.
On the Avenaughty.
Leave us a review and rate the show and donate to the Patreon, and maybe you'll get a free Avenaughty t-shirt from Ponzi Scream.
Yeah, it'll be great.
But tonight we're gonna talk about something, and I think we should talk about
we have to have a serious talk.
J-Lo's performance at the Super Bowl when she had the cape with the Puerto Rico U.S. inverted cape. The feather cape. We saw that.
Mm-hmm. Saw it, loved it.
Because she.
I actually didn't see the Super Bowl halftime. I got to look up this cape.
I thought it was great. I really liked it.
A powerful hashtag representation matters.
Yeah, I mean with
booties, booties, man.
Yes,
gorgeous. I mean, just some really nice
kids were there on the stage in cages.
Oh my God, that is an audacious cape. My God, that thing is Jesus Christ on a fucking cross. That thing. I was expecting like just sort of like Conor McGregor with a flag around it, but this thing is feathers. It is huge.
What I love about your reaction, Danny, is that you were not commenting on anything else about their costume except for the cape.
Dude, the cape. I mean, maybe just the perspective at which I'm seeing it, but this thing looks like bigger than like a Harry Potter robe situation. It's huge.
It is like an invisibility cloak for her ass.
Yeah. This is a bit too much.
Lot of stamina. She's 50 years old. Great dancing.
That
still looks fit.
The pole dance is apparently incredibly difficult. That pole, where she was like holding herself up and climbing up the pole, is apparently very, very challenging. I've talked to numerous firefighters.
Oh yeah, I saw this meme online, and it was a picture of like Blanche from Golden Girls, and then next to J-Lo, and it was like 50 in 1985 versus 50 in 2020.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful.
The abuelas are looking good, man.
All right, so we're gonna go back to an earlier time in Puerto Rico. We're gonna talk about bonds, baby. We're back on the bonds. Okay,
one of the most sensible, stable commodities that you can buy? Securities.
Yeah, it's not corn. Bonds are not corn.
I say this every morning to myself in the mirror. But yeah, no, I mean, look, they're a good thing. A lot of people have a bond, especially a government bond or like a state bond.
You can buy a bond for the city of New York.
Yes, you can. You can buy.
Really? I want to buy a bond for the city of New York.
You could buy a bond to send a salami to your boy in fighting in the trenches in World War I.
That's right, war bonds.
War bonds. Yeah. So, anyways, Puerto Rico. There was this act in 1917, not the movie, the Jones-Shafroth Act of 1917, granted U.S. citizenship to residents in Puerto Rico.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Hey, colony, now citizen. Hey, now you guys have like liminal status as citizens. Cool.
You can vote, maybe.
You can vote.
Maybe not in Puerto Rico, but you can vote because you're an American citizen. You can travel freely.
Yes, you can travel freely between them. You are protected by like U.S. laws, like civil rights laws. Well, not in 1917 you weren't because they didn't exist, but like I think you could be protected by Can Puerto Ricans vote for president?
Yes,
they can vote for president.
They can vote for primary, certainly.
Yes,
I know that.
No, they can't vote for president, or can they?
I don't think they can vote for president.
Oh, I'm so glad we've done all our research on.
Yeah, I'm so glad
on the Scream.
Well, also, I mean, this is another thing I'm kind of thinking about. I had no idea that was 103 years ago. Puerto Rico seems to have like more long standing than like Oklahoma.
Hey, Future Danny here. Apparently, Oklahoma became a state on November 16th, 1907. Followed by New Mexico in 1912, as well as Arizona in 1912. But Puerto Rico is technically older than both Alaska and Hawaii, which both became states in 1959. So just a little food for thought.
Hawaii?
Yeah.
Like
resident, they cannot vote for presidents.
Yeah. No.
Not entitled to electoral votes for presidents. And they do not have voting representation in Congress, but they have like representation in Congress that cannot vote on bills. They can sit on committees. And like I think there's like the Natural Resources Committee is where all the territories are for some reason.
So if the Democrats wanted to gain more power, they would make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. states.
Yes,
Statehood
that would be something that
deal.
They could do.
Yeah.
Or the Republicans completely change their brand and become and try to court that vote and then try and do that as well. But they would never do that. So anyways, this Jones-Shafroth Act also spelled out a number of stipulations defining the territory's relationship with the U.S. mainland. This is from Investopedia. One of those stipulations involved Puerto Rican municipal bonds, in which the ways they would be treated differently than bonds issued by states. Okay? So, going to get into the weeds a little bit here. Interest income on most municipal bonds is subject to taxes by various levels of government, including federal, state, and local. The primary exception is when an investor purchases a bond issued by his or her own state of residence. Okay, so if you're from Florida and you invest in Florida bonds, you are going to be exempted from this various level of taxation. So this interest income. So from your returns on these bonds.
Yeah,
okay?
with the idea being like, yeah, you're a resident. We want to encourage you as a resident of Florida to invest in your sunshine bonds. You know?
Yeah, the sunshine bonds. So the weird thing about this is that this 1917 Act made it exempted Puerto Rican municipal bonds from all three levels of taxation as well. As a result, residents of all 50 states and other U.S. territories could invest in Puerto Rican bonds without paying interest on the income. Okay?
Okay.
So what that means is that Puerto Rican bonds are very, very lucrative. Okay?
Yes.
For everybody. In addition to, we live in New York. New York bonds are lucrative because we're exempt from these taxes. So are Puerto Rican bonds because they are a territory. Okay? As a result of this, investment dollars began flooding into Puerto Rican government bonds. Okay? This failed to cause problems for many, many decades, okay? But during the 1970s, the territory's government started using bond investment money to balance its budget, despite being borrowed funds and not actual revenue.
Yes.
Okay, so they're using that loan that all of us might be giving them because our investment portfolio has Puerto Rican bonds, so we're giving them this loan. And that loan, they start using that for their own revenue. So they're like leveraging the loan to pay for infrastructure, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so they start doing this, and this is a weird, huge problem for them because now all of a sudden they're using basically like money that isn't theirs to fund their government.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's essentially borrowed money.
They broke the piggy bank.
But are they using it? Okay, so here's my question. Because they're not a state, is that why they're just like, I guess we got to use these bonds?
Yes.
Because they're not getting as much money that like fucking Maryland or Nebraska or whatever would get from the federal government.
So Puerto Rico, compared to other states with poor residents, such as like Mississippi or something, Puerto Rico receives a tiny fraction of federal money to assist with social spending. As a result, the territory must heavily earmark its own budget to provide money for federally mandated programs.
Really now?
Along with welfare and other safety net initiatives to help the needy.
So hold on one second. If it's a federally mandated program, that means that it has to be done.
Yeah.
But in every other instance with other states like Mississippi, there's federally mandated programs, but the federal government has to give Mississippi the money to perform these responsibilities. In Puerto Rico, they're demanding that they do the same things that Mississippi does, but they don't give them as much money to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Shit's
right.
going out, but it's not coming back in.
It's a little bit like the ACA.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Where
Let's hear it.
You're telling people who are barely above minimum wage now that they qualify for health care, but they don't qualify for Medicaid.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, now you have to buy into this program, this almost federally mandated program that, but you have to pay this much.
And you're like, well,
out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and you're like, well, I'm already kind of poor. It's like, no. You're above the poverty level by 10 or 15 odd %. So actually, you have to pay your rent as ostensibly increases $200 a month, and the health care that we're giving you still costs money.
Yeah.
yeah. There's a version of it there.
You see it. You see it. And so the thing is that on top of that, so that there was this huge deficit, but there's this thing that's keeping Puerto Rico's economy afloat, which is something that has been going on you see this all over the world now, thanks to globalization, is that you have tax advantages to try and encourage corporate entities to stay on the island. Okay, so this is the constant thing that happens. This race to the bottom thing of globalization, where we're going to cut taxes so that way the few people who have the ability to provide jobs and a decent lifestyle and a decent living will stay on this island and continue to provide those things. Okay, so Puerto Rico was very tax advantageous, and so people wanted to set up companies there. Okay,
Big Pharma. They set up a lot of companies there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh.
So so like manufacturing stuff will be there. They got rid of those tax advantages. So all of a sudden, the few ways that they could get tax money to pay back these bonds left, because all of a sudden they got rid of these tax advantages because they needed to raise taxes or something. I mean, they need to make money to pay off these bonds. So then it exacerbates everything even more. People start fleeing the island because there's no jobs. Everyone's moving, and like people start moving to the mainland because that's where the jobs are. Okay,
Yeah.
Which like totally reasonable thing to do.
So now you have no tax base.
Now you have no tax base. So then you're like triple screwed, right? I mean, you're really, really in trouble. Okay, so then they're in a really, really tough spot. So around 2008, under the conservative Luis Fortuño administration, this guy, this man named Carlos Garcia, okay, so he was the head of Promesa. Promesa is formerly, this Garcia was the head of the Bank of Santander. Then he was overseeing the, according to The Nation described it, privatization and pillage of Puerto Rico's anemic public assets.
Okay, so he went in there and sort of shock doctrined it?
Honestly, yeah.
Okay.
So take a step back for a second, okay?
Yeah.
So Promesa is the Puerto Rico Oversight Management and Economic Stability Act, okay? So they have all this debt. So they try to... let's see. Oh man, I'm losing track. So
no, it's okay. Just to recap, so people know what's happening. Puerto Rico becomes part of America. They get these bonds. They start spending the bonds because they don't have any income from America. Corporations get incentivized to move there, but then they lose that incentivization. People leave Puerto Rico, and now it's 2008, and there's not a lot of money and not a lot of people.
So,
but they borrow. But a lot of people have given them bonds.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have loaned Puerto Rico money.
Yes.
That they'll eventually have to pay back.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So starting around 2008, okay, this guy Garcia, who worked for Santander Bank, okay, was appointed to head Puerto Rico's Government Development Bank and its Public-Private Partnerships Authority, two agencies designed to draw investment capital into the crumbling public sector. Basically, he led the abrupt liquidation of an infrastructure fund known as the Corpus Accounts, which is a public financing vehicle for infrastructure projects, to meet, which was needed in order to meet federal Clean Water and Drinking Act requirements. Then,
okay, all right.
Yeah, so like,
he's privatizing these things.
Yeah, so they argued that despite the glaring conflict of interest, Garcia had free reign to issue unsustainable bonds from 2009 to 2011 to his former employer. Santander earned millions as a lead or participating underwriter in these transactions.
Yes.
So not only is he using this debt crisis to privatize these banks, essentially, these to create this like public-private partnership to like draw away from this corpus account, which is financing public infrastructure. Okay.
Yes.
He is also using to do that, underwriting his former employer Santander into these public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
So an underwriter is somebody who basically is like kind of an insurance policy on like a financial transaction.
The cosigner.
They're the cosigner.
So if you rent for anybody else, you want to rent an apartment, you don't have the credit for it, you're making the money, but you can't prove it. Your parents are cosigning your
get a
apartment.
guarantor.
Yeah, you're a guarantor. An underwriter is kind of like a guarantor, cosigner.
You break the lease.
Yeah.
They got to pay the piper.
Yeah.
So Santander is a 23-year-old NYU grad's
No. Santander
guarantor.
Santander
is their parents.
Is
their
the parents. They're the parents in this analogy.
I was going to get to the parents. Yeah. The parents of a 23-year-old NYU grad living in Ridgewood,
which is Puerto Rico.
Yes. Puerto Rico is the NYU grad. Oh my God, this is getting
It's complicated, but it makes sense. And maybe just to really hammer this out for people a little bit, if this seems a little weird, it has happened in America many times before, with one of the most glaring things being what happened in New Orleans right after Hurricane Katrina happened. Because what happened there is, this horrible natural disaster essentially hits the Gulf Coast, fucking destroys a bunch of infrastructure, all these sort of stabilizing forces within New Orleans. And then what happens is a big bureaucratic force comes in and says, all right, things are too crazy right now. We need to take all these public goods, essentially, and we need to hand them over to private companies so that they can, quote unquote, make them better or whatever. And that is exactly what happened in New Orleans. The whole public school system got privatized.
Yeah.
And if you look at history, when things get privatized, that's not good for the people who aren't the people privatizing them.
Yeah. So, and it's even worse for Puerto Rico for two reasons, but that it is tied to its territorial status. One, they can't get tax revenue off these bonds. So, they're not getting tax revenue in that way, and they are not protected by bankruptcy protections. They cannot file for Chapter 9, which is the chapter that municipal governments file for when they file for bankruptcy. Like Detroit filed for Chapter 9.
Yeah.
They can't file for Chapter 9, so they have to go through these weird territorial bankruptcy issues. And also this PROMESA board, which was the board that was helping to deal with Puerto Rico's debt crisis. And this comes into in 2012. They start trying to handle this sort of bond issue. And they are offering conditional relief in exchange for brutal fiscal cutbacks.
Austerity.
So, precisely.
Everybody loves austerity.
Yeah.
So rather nobody. That's the opposite.
It's actually no one.
So PROMESA is this board that is created to help with Puerto Rico's debt relief. This is all spiraling downward. This is PROMESA is very much U.S. to Puerto Rico is like Germany to Greece. Right around the exact same time as well. Right after the financial crisis, they basically, Greece and Puerto Rico and have similar things where they are both subject to certain laws and currencies and financial markets of wealthier nations, but are also getting screwed over and don't have the same protections and don't have the same access to capital that wealthier nations do.
So
all the rules, none of the benefits.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I don't know if I'm stepping out of line. I'm stepping out of line here, but it's just one of those things where one half of it is the fact that they're just not recognizing them as a state, which it looks like a state, acts like a state, all the things,
Totally.
It's just East Coast Hawaii, essentially. In this case, no offense to any Pacific Islanders or Puerto Ricans in this case. But the other aspect of it is just sort of this kind of underlying racism, where it's just no. You cannot be expected to handle your own stuff, so we're not going to give you any of the actual benefits of statehood.
Yeah, precisely. It is a paternalism for sure.
Paternalism. That's
yeah,
it. Yeah.
And it's definitely a thing of we will only let you into the wealthy white country on the condition that you follow these extremely onerous austerity regimes and not really infringe upon our liberty in a real way. It's just a liminal citizenship, and that's this is a financial version thereof. So as a result of that, there are two weird things that are happening right now in court. Puerto Rico is suing, arguing on two constitutional challenges. Okay, this is kind of interesting. One, that one of the oversight boards that was created in order to manage Puerto Rico's debt was not constitutional because it has so much power that the people who are in charge of the oversight board should have been appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, but they were not.
Yeah. It's just Okay, yeah, it's like the War Act or whatever it is, where like the Senate is the one who confirms acts of wars, or Congress does. It's like the president can't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're trying to do.
They're trying to balance it. It's like, no, this was all private.
Yeah. I mean, or they were saying this was all done by essentially executive order, and it wasn't following the constitutional processes, and so therefore everything that they've done, all the regimes that they've implemented, should be undone, essentially. So they're trying to argue that it should not have to comply with these terms. The second one, but then the court is saying that it may be unconstitutional, and they may have to, and like the Senate may have to like retroactively confirm these guys, but there's this basically principle of law that says that you should just follow what was going on. Just go with the officers, even though they weren't officially allowed, sanctioned to do what they were supposed to do.
Come on, I'm already in this club.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm wearing a collared shirt. You know, I'm cool. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So the defense is trying to argue that, but then Puerto Rico's like, no, man, that condition works, but it doesn't apply in constitutional situations. We'll see how it goes. That's still going on. The second one is a little bit more specific. This is where it gets weird.
Ooh,
so
creepy.
There have been some of these bonds that have been classified as on the intake as bonds, but they have not been bonds. Okay.
What?
Basically, Puerto Rico's constitution, it has its own territorial constitution. It says that there is a debt limit on how many bonds it can take out. The lawsuit is saying that they were issued too much debt illegally, and that the people of Puerto Rico should not have to repay it. It's God, I'm losing my train of thought.
Maybe this makes sense. This is kind of what it sounds like to me. It kind of sounds like a situation similar to the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, where what happened is you gave a bunch of people loans and mortgages to houses that the person issuing that mortgage knew in full well that they couldn't actually repay it. So it's a situation where it's like, yeah, this is, we're being responsible. It's like, no, you would never do that. It's irresponsible to do that. It's predatory.
Here it is. The lawsuits center on Puerto Rico's constitutional debt limit, which establishes a ceiling for the amounts of general obligation bonds the island's government can issue. The limit does not apply to other types of debt, however, and the lawsuits argue, this is from the New York Times, by the way, the lawsuits argue that the banks helped Puerto Rico's government design and market bonds that appeared to be something other than general obligation bonds, thereby circumventing the limit and ultimately making the island's insolvency much worse. So what Danny was saying is true in principle, basically, but really what it was some chicanery. Okay, they were saying that these were... I love
David,
that word.
I was going to say, David, I think you've dropped that 3 out of 7 episodes so far. Maybe 4 out of 7.
Well, I interviewed a source, and he used that word too many times in an interview, and I just think it's beautiful. It's just like, it's gorgeous.
Do you know what chicanery means?
Bad stuff. Malfeasance, perhaps. A little bit of higgledy-piggledy.
Chicanery, the use of trickery to achieve a political, financial, or legal purpose.
I certainly don't know what it means.
So
I'm still trying to follow all of this. You guys have been hopping around a lot. So what is the
quite complicated?
So are these bonds fake bonds? Are these like fake Rolexes that are being sold?
So
like I don't quite understand.
Here's an example that the New York Times gives. The complaint said that the bonds issued by Puerto Rico's Public Buildings Authority to build and maintain public schools were to be repaid by rental payments on the building. That made them seem like they were revenue bonds, which are not counted towards the debt ceiling in that constitutional limit. But in fact, the rent payments were made by the government's general fund, the same source of money that repays the general obligation bonds. For that reason, the school construction bonds should have been counted as general obligation bonds, the lawsuit says. Had all the government's bonds been properly classified, it would have been clear that Puerto Rico had exceeded its constitutional debt limit, the lawsuit said.
Yeah, I think...
Does that help, Gabe?
I mean,
Almost, yes.
I mean, it really just does seem. I mean, I think to really make it very simple, it's it's the same as when you give somebody like too many credit cards and you say this is going to be your only way to like pay off things, pay your rent, do these things. We know that we're not putting you in a position to be able to pay off these debts, but we're going to give you these cards anyway. And when you go over those limits, we're going to blame you. And Puerto Rico's being like, nah, dude, that's not how it works.
I understand that. I guess I think it was just more the actual technical difference between these bonds, but I don't care.
I don't think it matters. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, it does matter because it is like...
Yeah.
I just don't...
It's really complicated. Look, so there are general obligation bonds, and they have a limit in Puerto Rico's constitution that they can be assigned to Puerto Rico.
That's right.
Because the Puerto Rico's territorial constitution does not allow the territory to take on too much debt.
Yes.
They know there'll be problems if there's too much debt.
Right. So there's a cap, and then something else
basically,
just happens.
So the defendants, which are Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, a number of other major banks, and
all these not evil people.
Definitely
not evil.
Yeah, and so so far we've implicated Santander and all these and then these three guys and a few others, and then this big law firm Sidley Austin that the Obamas worked for. That's where they met. They were working at Sidley Austin together.
That's cute. I thought that Obama was a community organizer.
He did that right out of college.
So this is not. This was him not doing community organizing.
This is like in between Harvard Law School and teaching at the University of Chicago, the most conservative law school in the country.
Yeah,
this is him organizing a Citibank, Santander, HSBC gangbang on Puerto Rico.
This is the complete opposite of community organizing. It's going into a community with a flamethrower and just, you know.
It is, precisely. It is not community organizing. Is shock doctrine, capitalism. So basically, these people are in the complaint. These banks and Sidley Austin misclassified the general obligation bonds as some other kind of bond, so that way they could exceed the constitutional limits.
I think that's what I was getting
and
at.
Issue more bonds.
That makes it more clear to me than it's just us giving them, not us, but the U.S. giving them more debt than they can handle. These bonds were misrepresented
as something that they're not, when in reality they were like accounted for as general obligation bonds, so therefore they should have been these constitutionally limited general obligation bonds. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
So it is Danny's principle, like what you're saying, but there's this constitutional limit, not like a reasonableness limit, which is kind of what you're saying. There's kind of like a reasonable financial consumer would not buy this McMansion, but this is like, no, there's a constitutional limit, and JP Morgan allegedly and the others it manipulated Puerto
and that's
Rico
where the
into
crime
taking
is.
Because
the term
crime.
Reasonable is subjective. So it's very hard to argue whether something is like fair or unfair, but it is easier to argue whether something is actual white collar crime.
Yeah,
where you're lying.
What is the thing with federal pension funds? Reasonable accountability, or what's it called? Again?
Reasonable fees. Fees shall be reasonable.
Fees shall not be unreasonable.
Yeah, fees shall not be. The word reasonable, if you guys do ever go to law school, is thrown around a lot. It is a pretty meaningless term, but it is very fact specific. But anyways, this is not about the term reasonableness. This is about whether they are exceeding this constitutional limit that exists or not. It's either there or it's not.
Yeah, and I guess we're still in the middle of this case, right?
We are still in the middle of this case. Puerto Rico is trying to get so then there's people who want to get rid of cancel all of Puerto Rico's debt and like undo Promesa. That's like, I think Bernie, I think Warren also has said she wants to do that. Trump mentioned canceling all of Puerto Rico's debt in 2017.
Just like one of his random little brain farts.
Yeah, he
said,
said,
I want to get rid of a debt.
Yeah, exactly. Like
he's like, I know what it's like to have unreasonable debts?
Yeah, actually, real talk. Like he can very much. That's like one of the things he loves.
Believe it, take it from me. I understand bankruptcy and
exactly.
Yeah. So he just like farted it out or whatever. I mean, just like in the same reason that like Jared Kushner like wanted to do criminal justice reform because his father served time in a white collar prison. You know, like just these people are just maniacs. So anyway, so like that is where we're at with Puerto Rico. The thing is that there's a lot of arguments that are saying that, okay, because of this bond thing, you're really only hurting the people who are taking these out. Who owns Puerto Rican bonds? You know, and there's a lot of litigation about, because now all these bondholders are trying to get their money back, and there have been just so much litigation about this. Basically, UBS, Santander, and a few others have been in arbitration. Basically saying with their clients, because there are some people that were recommending Puerto Rican bonds from 2009 to 2011 when they very well knew that Puerto Rico was on the verge of complete financial collapse.
Oh my gosh, dude, this is
so. It's not the customers that are to blame. You know, it's not the old ladies in Florida that were being told buy Puerto Rican bonds.
Yeah.
That they were being scammed as well. So it's the middlemen. It's the banks.
It's the banks that are doing it because they're making some extra money. And it's the individual brokers. So there's this one guy, you can look him up on Broker Check.
We love Broker Check. We love it.
He has let's see, his name is Angel Manuel Canabal Sr.
That is quite the name.
And his name is Cannibal. And he
Cannibal.
So he has it's really hard to count the number of financial disputes, but
does he have a lot of red dots next to him?
He has a lot of red dots next to him.
Ooh, I want to see if I can see his red dots.
You want to see? Okay, so look at all those red dots.
Whoa! Oh my gosh, Gabe, it's so funny. It's just like this solid block.
There have been 94 disclosures, quote unquote. And that is what
a lot of chicken pox.
A lot of chicken pox going on
here. This is all this litigation, and he is still employed. Okay, my friends, he is still employed. Oh my God, where the hell is he employed? This is so embarrassing. He's still employed at UBS. He's still there.
What?
He's still at UBS. Yeah, he's been there since 1998, and he is still there. 94 complaints, and most of them related to poorly issuing Puerto Rican bonds to people.
So he's like a financial advisor, essentially.
He's a broker.
He's a broker, and he's just like, I know what you're gonna absolutely love.
You're gonna love.
I serve up one thing and one thing only.
Puerto Rican bonds. So he's been
about as juicy as a Trump steak.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he's been in all these arbitrations to try and get this handled, to get this because people are alleging that he gave him these faulty Puerto Rican bonds when he shouldn't have known. You know, sometimes we don't even see these because these guys will get their rap sheet expunged, but we can see that there have been 94 disclosures against
so
him.
Many.
So there could have been more. We really don't know. So there's all sorts of things going on. So in addition to individual grandmas and grandpas that are putting in Puerto Rican bonds, it could be wealthier people. Either way, firms like UBS, firms like JP Morgan, firms like Santander are all making money every single step of this process. Remember, the underwriter was a former employee the guy who was part of the austerity board, okay? Garcia, he used to work for Santander, and he got Santander to underwrite this austerity regime, okay, not related to Promesa, okay? This lawsuit alleging that they misidentified these bonds, that was chicanery done by JP Morgan and these other folks, okay? This individual broker is recommending these faulty bonds. He's still an employee at UBS. All of these guys are finding their own little special way to soak up Puerto Rico.
I want Adam McKay to make a sequel to The Big Short that's like Casa de mi Padre for Puerto Rico and this debt crisis.
El Grande Pequeño.
El Grande Pequeño.
The little small, my friends. Friend Danny speaks just un poco español.
And I think that's kind of where we're at with Puerto Rico. That's all I know of.
I mean, you know what I gotta say to the listeners and everything who've made it through the episode. It's like it's tough. it's tough to understand this because it's on purposely complicated.
Yes.
It's
intentionally.
It's intentionally and complicated. And I know that before today, if you told me, Danny, why is Puerto Rico bankrupt? The only part of that I would have a slight inkling of like actual knowledge of was like, oh yeah, Puerto Rico is in like financial trouble, but I have no idea why, what happened.
And it all roots down to financial firms capitalizing on the fact that Puerto Rico has liminal citizenship status.
Yeah, it's a gray market.
It is a gray market, and they've been capitalizing off of their territorial status, and Puerto Rico has been hurt every single step of the way because of the provisions of their territoriality.
So colonialism has never ended.
No,
and this is like a mercantilist relationship between us and the mainland and Puerto Rico.
If people say that financialization is not extractive, look at Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Okay, like you're like, oh, it's the finance sector. It's just people moving around numbers, bleepity boopity boop. It's not like oil or gold or slavery. Those are extractive. It's like this is just as extractive,
right? And making useless investments for people who are investing. The fact that these bonds it was incentivized people from all over the mainland to put money into this place that would ultimately end up to be worthless. Through no fault of the Puerto Rican people themselves.
Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, like, I think we've all seen like weird little John Oliver like segments where they're like, we're going to talk about payday loan shit, and we're going to talk about food deserts in this. I tell me if I'm wrong, but the whole situation really just reeks of that flavor of like inequality and what have you. It's just sort of like you don't get the same options in like chances as a thing governed by the United States, a territory,
as Detroit or New York City. They will not have those sorts of things. And I think I'm sure John Oliver has covered Puerto Rico's debt crisis, but there is not the level of complicity and just understanding as just to how extractive there is. I mean, it's bad news bears, guys, and basically maybe and then on top of all that stuff, there's been Maria. And then there was this earthquake that just happened recently. So I mean, like on top of that, the infrastructure, which was already privatized and looted thanks to these austerity regimes, this Garcia guy from Santander. Then the infrastructure is also just crumbling because of hurricanes and earthquakes. Like it just keeps going and just keeps getting deeper. And recently, the people of Puerto Rico, I don't know if you guys saw this photo on Twitter. There are people carrying a guillotine to the governor's house.
I saw that.
Someone made an actual guillotine, and they were carrying it in the streets on the way, I think, to the governor's house because turns out there was some food that was just sitting in a shipping container that was not given to the people for whatever reason.
Was it just like rotten or
no, a lot of that stuff is just like dried goods. So
I don't think it had gone rotten yet, but it was just sitting there, and it was like been there for 2 years since Maria or something like that. And so it's just like this. So I mean, like there will be the thing that's always been weird about Puerto Rico is I feel like there's been a third of the population that doesn't care, a third of the population that robustly wants independence, and a third of the population that robustly wants statehood. And I think that that third is getting eaten. The first third
doesn't care.
That group is slowly diminishing, and they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller because they are getting a rotten deal. Puerto Rico is getting the candle burnt at both ends, and eventually there's going to come to a head. And I think that there will be a vote to determine whether they're going to get statehood or independence. And I don't know, which one do you guys think would be better for them?
I mean, Puerto Rico is like a really interesting situation because I mean we all live in function in New York City, and there's obviously a gigantic Puerto Rican population that lives here. And I think anybody who talks to, Puerto Rican people knows that, like, especially if you're traveling there, Puerto Rico being a territory of the United States is like really good. It's also like one of the reasons I've talked to people and friends who say that like it's one of the weird little sore spots between Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, where it's like, yeah, if you go to the Dominican Republic, you gotta have a passport. It's just not as easy to get in between those two places in terms of just like them being a territory. But like, I mean, as far as them not being, I mean, obviously they should be able to choose what they want. I mean, I feel like choice isn't a part of this. There's no part of this has this ever really included choice. And I mean,
true, that's the most important thing. It's not, and ultimately it's not.
I can't say whether or not it's good or not because I just don't really have the context for it. I don't know what their natural resources are. I don't know what the relationship to the United States would be if they were an independent state. But yeah,
I mean, it could go anywhere. Their independence, I mean, they could go anywhere from Costa Rica to Venezuela in terms of relationship. You know, they could be or somewhere weirdly in between.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's their choice.
Really? I mean, I just kind of think,
but my island, my choice.
But you know, thinking about progressive politics in the United States, and also, well, one, how self-sufficient can any place be anymore? Like we're all kind of integrated into a global economy and into a global financial system. So what would happen if what would the benefits really be if Puerto Rico was a state? I think it would benefit the United States, like whatever our collective agreement of a nation is would benefit. And and right now Puerto Rican citizens they are citizens of the United States. So what would they lose by becoming a sovereign state? Yeah, all of their own. You know what this is? There's so many people of Puerto Rican descent in New York City. And in Florida and all over the country. So if it became its own country, would those people become dual citizens or would they become
something else? Yeah, great question.
It just, I mean, this is a relationship after 1 month. You know, you're going to each other's houses. You know, you're eating meals together, and then we really do have to have the complicated conversation where somebody just says, "What are we?"
Yeah,
what are we? Okay, we need to put a label on this.
Yeah, and what's the best way to get reparations, or if not that, create a more equitable arrangement after a century of exploitative colonialism?
Yeah.
You know, is the benefit to actually become a full-fledged component of the empire, or to try to break away and start your own thing?
I mean, the difficulty is that there's not like a balance of the Soviet Union where you can like try to like leverage the two competing against each other.
There'll never be a Fidel in.
There's never going to be a Fidel in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
there won't be a Fidel. Like there won't be. I mean, and like. Fidel, frankly, Fidel was a unique time and place. And so that's going to happen. So you're going to create, the way I see it is if Puerto Rico becomes independent, UBS, JP Morgan, Santander are all going to still find ways to exploit Puerto Rico and create financial neoliberal, neocolonial kind of regimes. And so the way I would see it is that independence could actually not lessen that sort of financial neocolonialism. It wouldn't change that at all. The only thing that would really change it is if they became full-fledged citizens and members of Congress and the Senate and could vote for president. Then they could have the same level of agency that the three of us do in this room over being able to protect themselves from over-financialization and financial exploitation, which is basically like, I don't know, like some semblance of democracy. That's the only thing that we really... And they would be able to file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. That seems nice as well.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be chill as hell.
Yeah, so having no dog in the fight and no emotional stake in any sense of nationalism, I'm all about them. That it'd be cool to have them as a state. I'd be like, hell yeah, let's change all the flags. Add another star.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm all about that shit. Yeah. Well, we'll obviously, Puerto Rico... Body Puerto Rico choice.
My Puerto Rico, my choice.
Let's tick tock, baby.
Let's tick the talk down. My name's David. This is Ponzi Scream. I love you guys.
Oh, my name is Danny. This is Ponzi Scream, and I am real. Look, what are we? All right. What is this?
Yeah, Gabe Pacheco here. Let's go steady. I love you.
Good night.
All right. Bye.